Everyone loves to see wildlife when they go out on a hike. The thrill of seeing a bobcat in the wild is exhilarating. However, most animals scram when they hear people coming down the trail. Usually when I'm out, I only see a critter when I come up on them unexpectedly and they don't have time to run or fly away. That is why it is so important when surveying for wildlife to know about the scat, tracks, and signs that can tell us what had been there. A few years ago, I was able to attend a wildlife training conducted by Dr. John Tomachek on animal tracks and scat. As a wildlife expert, he had some wonderful tips on what we can learn from scat. At the training, Dr. Tomachek told us about the 3 C's of scat ID: color, composition, and communication. If the scat is dark in color, he said that could mean the animal eats meat with lots of blood present. If it is light in color, that could mean the animal eats plants or maybe animals with hair. Either way, the color can be a big clue to what the animal eats, which can lead to tell you what type of animal left it. Composition is another clue. If you get down to the ground level and take a closer look, you may notice leftover parts of what the animal ate, such as ant parts with the Texas horn lizards. Horn lizard scat looks similar to a Tootsie Roll with an end cap of white uric acid. But the shiny ant exoskeleton pieces will definitely let you know it came from a horn lizard. You probably won't find any of these during the winter time, but be sure to keep an eye out when spring gets here. The composition of the scat can tell you a story of what the animal ate and maybe where it has been also, as in this example of raccoon scat that we discovered recently at Comanche Springs Astronomy Campus. If you look closely, you can find pieces of corn. That's right. Now, where would a raccoon that is far away from a cornfield find corn? Most likely from a deer corn feeder a few miles away. Animals can use scat for communication. Sometimes it is placed intentionally to let other animals in the area know that this is their territory and to stake a claim. Coyotes will leave scat visibly along the trails, usually for that reason. Bobcats will sometimes scrape with their back legs when leaving behind scat, which can partially cover the scat, but not always. Animal scat also has other characteristics that can tell you what the animal left it behind. Bobcat scat is cylindrical and usually segmented, while coyote scat is tapered on both ends. Sometimes you can just figure out what animal left it by being observant to what animals are around the area. For example, last summer I kept seeing this scat that looked like lizard scat because of the cylindrical dark shape and the white tipped uric acid end. But it wasn't from a Texas horn lizard. The consistency was different. And then I noticed that I kept seeing it everywhere I would look. Along with seeing that, I noticed that the common spotted whiptail lizards were in that same area. So if you put the evidence together, you would say it must be spotted whiptail scat. Of course, I'm not an expert, but when you make observations over time, you can put things together and come up with a conclusion. Another one that I kept seeing in different places was a small, round, squiggly shaped scat with a white center. This one had me puzzled for a while until I watched a webinar on tracking by Heidi Krieger, who said it was a dove. Makes total sense. All the areas that I saw this scat also had doves nearby. This next one took some more research, and I'm still not quite positive on it. It looked different than any that I had ever seen, so I took a photo and kept it on my keep checking list. Eventually, I found another sample that looked like it on iNaturalist in the North American Animal Tracks database. I'm still not positive, but I think it's porcupine scat. Now let's switch over to animal tracks. When an animal makes its way through the mud, sand, loose dirt, or snow, they can leave behind a distinguishable track. With practice, you can figure out what animal was there by identifying their tracks. But tracks can be extremely difficult to identify. Depending on what you find them in, tracks might be incomplete. With tracks, it's also important to look at the size. It's a good idea to carry a 6-inch ruler or have something to use for a size reference. I always forget to do this when I'm finding animal tracks and sometimes have to improvise by putting a cell phone or keys in the photograph. Some people will put their foot in the photo, but a ruler would be the best. Having a tool like a game camera could come in handy to figure out what animal has been there also. One trick that Dr. Tomachek uses is the X trick in telling canines from feline tracks. Take a look at this animal track. To tell if it's a canine or a feline, you can find a couple of sticks or a pencil and see if you can place them between the toes and the pad of the track. If you can and they fit between the toes, then you will find out that it is a canine, such as a coyote in this case. With the next track, if you try to put an X between the toes and the pad, it does not fit between the toes because it's much wider, and that means that it is a feline, like a bobcat, or possibly a mountain lion. There is so much to learn when studying about animal tracks. For me, the best way to learn tracks is through experience. There are some tools that you can use to help you with tracks and scat. An app that you can get called iTrack Pro is a great app to use to help with ID. It asks you for track size, number of toes, shape of toes, claws, track symmetry, and other features such as the webbing or fur that you might see by the toes. You also might want to get a 6-inch ruler. Always take your camera. You could also do track cast kits with plaster and water and rings. You could use dental stone, and it's a good idea to bring some whirl packs or Ziploc bags to keep the scat if you want to collect and look at it closer with the microscope. NatureTracking.com with Jonah Evans is an awesome resource. Check it out. And to finish up today, I want to tell you about how you can find signs of animals without actually seeing the animal. For instance, we saw this tree stump that had been chewed with fresh wood chippings around it. And then we came across a footprint that was very similar to a beaver footprint. In the same area at Comanche Springs, I started to look around and found a cache of juniper branches that is in the water. Beavers tend to do that to save up for winter when it freezes over. As we explored some more, we actually found a beaver dam with fresh mud. And to sum it all up, we found a beaver lodge. Even though we didn't see a beaver there, we know that there was one there because of the signs that we saw in the environment. To finish this off, I want to leave you with some of the tracks that were recently found in the snow during the big freeze. Just remember, when you're out, keep your eye looking around for tracks and signs and scat and anything that can give you evidence of what kind of animals have walked through or have been there. And remember, you're only going to find tracks of the animals that actually live in the rolling plains. Don't forget to get out this week, go on a hike, enjoy some time outdoors, and then join us for the Campfire Conversation at 3 o'clock on February 27th. Hope to see you there, and bring something that you found during your hike.